Welcome to the last day of the year. It's been a wild one. It has definitely been a wild one. But we're gonna sort of kind of recap everything that went down on a numerological side, of course, because this is Numbers with Ace Jakari, and I'm your host, Ace Jakari, which you already know. Call me Ace, but welcome to the Universal 7-year wrap-up, where we're gonna talk about everything that went down on the number side to an extent and really kind of go over the themes that I discussed in actually my first YouTube video ever that I may or may not link in the comments. I'm not sure how to delete or not delete, how much dedication I am to exposing myself. But I might just do it just so you can see the growth and also see what I was talking about in that video. But if you're liking what you're hearing, make sure you share it on your socials and tag me at Numbers with Ace Jakari on Instagram and TikTok. All the direct links are in the description of this episode. I do provide services, readings, client work, mentee work, and everything like that. But let's go ahead and get into these details, because 2023 was a Universal 7 year. We started off the year in a Universal 8 month and ended it in a Universal 1 month. That Universal 8 month was started on not only a Universal 8 month, but on a Universal 9 day in that Universal 7 year. So this is a very powerful energy that we started off the 7 year in. And to give more context to themes of 7 is ruled by Neptune, the South Node, and Mercury. Very intellectually stimulating, very much energetically stimulating as well, because Neptune is very formless and boundless. It's also very beautiful in how it goes about everything in regards to just the illusion and the delusion and the glamour and everything that comes with it. It's a very impactful energy and can sometimes be a little bit intense. Neptune is connected to dreams, inspiration, that inner psyche, spirituality, higher dimensions. So also astral projection is also in there, but there's a level of detachment that Neptune has to everything, where it's not grounding in the same way that Saturn per se is. It's not on solid ground. It's doing everything but that. And that is something that I feel like was very much experienced in this year, of just a lot of energetic shifts. And that even for people who aren't necessarily so in the spiritual bag, they just knew there was a vibe there. And that's pretty cool. And with that about South Node rulership being in there as well, you also have connections to the past and nostalgia and things that are familiar and comfort. So I feel like comfort zones were also very challenged this year, of a lot of difficult conversations and difficult realizations were had this year of the life that we once lived is not necessarily the life that we're going to continue to live in the future. And there's good things with that, and there's also some sad things with that. If there's be things from the past that we are craving as people and craving as humans, but some things that we just have to simply let go of, because for a new and a better to come, those things just have to go somewhere else. And that's just a realization that, you and I gotta accept, and it's not necessarily a fun one, but it is one. Now moving into that Universal day that we started off in, of it being a Universal 9 day, it just came with a punch. It was, though 7 is very delusional and very much not always fully grounded into what's going on right here, right now, and very as much as just sort of kind of floating around aimlessly, with 9 being in there, that adds to it. It adds to it, because 9 is ruled by Mars and Neptune. So all of those Neptunian themes are added right back in there, all again, just intensifying those Neptunian themes. So it's very much likely that this year started off with a lot of strong intuition and a lot of strong predictive dreams, or even things that sort of kind of gave you a vibe of what was to come, and fantasies either being indulged into or sort of kind of playing around with how we perceive those fantasies. I don't know if any movies came out day 1, but also visual art is something that's connected to Neptune. So I wouldn't be surprised if some really dope art came out on January 1st, 2023. But it's definitely been a long one at that. I think that 2023 sort of kind of was here for a really long time, but also at the same time was really short in both ways. It was like a lot of things happened, and with the year starting in that Universal 8 month as well, I think a lot of people might have gone into this year being like, okay, I'm going to achieve this, that, and the third. But with 7's elusive, just very much you don't know, a very mysterious energy, you might not have necessarily ended up where you thought you were going to end up. I think I sort of kind of got there, but it definitely was not by any means the path that I thought I was going to take that got me to where I am right now. Not at all. But it's been a journey. It definitely has been a journey. But I think especially with that universal 8 mixed with that 9 and that 7, it was a very intense energy that we were just starting off with an emphasis on power dynamics, authority, quick actions, deep thoughts, some broad ideas, perspective changes, things around confidence, and even self-perception were just all major themes to start this year off in. Now, as we are at the end of the year of December 31st, 2023, and everybody talking about the fact that today is, 12/31/23, and it's 123 and I've already talked about this before, but it's like it's only that if you write your days like that, but also the numerology of today is technically 157. So we have an emphasis on self with that 1 because we're in a universal 1 month. We have the emphasis on mental stimulation and also expansion and expression with that 5 being ruled by Mercury and Jupiter. And then 7 again, because we're in the universal 7 year still, highlighting that Neptune South Node and Mercury. So again, mental stimulation is very much a dominant theme. So we have new thoughts and ideas and confidence and introspection and knowledge and information and awareness all just wrapping up this year. And a very big theme that I don't know if in that first video that I did talking about this year's themes that came up was a lot of misinformation. I think that there was a lot of themes around control this year, and that's very much highlighted in how we started this year of that 8-9-7, that universal 8 month, that universal 9 day, and that universal 7 year of power dynamics of with power dynamics comes control, and it's like who's controlling what. And I've seen a lot of misinformation on a lot of different topics, a lot of things in regards to politics and world and environment themes. It's like there's been a lot of things around information specifically that has been really prominent, I feel like, in society, of people having more conversations around information and knowledge and where we're getting this information, who's credible sources and everything like that. And sometimes the credible sources aren't necessarily the big names that we've all grown up with. It might also be that person who's living it. It might be the person who's in that experience right now. That might be your most reliable source. And sometimes you really got to accept that some people and some corporations aren't in our best interest as people and as humans. And that's just, I think that's very true to this universal 7 year theme. But to go over the themes that I went over in my video that I did at the beginning of this year, there was a couple of things, and I kind of just wanted to do this just to see not even how on the nose I was, but just to sort of kind of look back at what I saw in ahead of it actually happening. Because even when I made this video, when I made it, I wasn't as in-depth and as thorough as I am present day as a numerologist. And I think that's also even something beautiful for me to experience, is my own personal growth in my field of expertise. So this has been really cool. So one of the biggest themes that came up in my personal experience, or one of the things that I wrote, was perfectionism. And I think that this definitely connects highly to the conversation around authenticity and intentionality. I feel like there was so many more open conversations and open dialogues around being yourself and how you can authentically be you, and what does that look like, and also intentionally taking up space, intentionally being yourself, and very much showing up how you need to show up in the best way possible. I've just seen a lot more conversations around that, and I think that in that video I originally said that perfectionism, the conversations around it might be around how we view perfection, and I think that has changed. I don't think that people are really trying to be perfect anymore. I think people are just trying to survive, which is not a great alternative, honestly, but I don't think people give a fuck like they once did about a certain look. I will say that there's probably somebody out there who does want to be perfect, but I don't think that the majority is in that bag anymore. I feel like there's so many more people who see how imperfect everything is, and how much the imperfection is one natural, and how much you can do when you're not so worried about being perfect. And I think that's beautiful, honestly. And one of the next themes was Delulu being Salulu, the Salulu. And I cannot stress how many times I've heard that this year. Oh my gosh. And one of the things I literally stated in that video was manifestations coming through delusional methods, because, 7 is connected to delusions and just and illusions of just things that aren't completely there, or you can't really see clearly, or might be a little bit fuzzy and hazy. And people were really in that Delulu being the Salulu bag, and it has worked. Now, I will say, with next year, aka tomorrow, being a universal 8-year, practicality is going to be a very big thing for next year. So that Delulu, in regards to how it's transitioning into next year, it might not work the same, because next year is ruled by Saturn and Pluto. So it's more looking at that realistic of how did we take everything that we were delusional about and just sort of kind of being like, oh yeah, it is whatever. Okay, this is how I see it. How do we see that and also compare that to the reality of it all? Because 8 is connected to reality and realism. So I think that will be a very interesting shift. And that's something that I definitely saw being a thing, was just that manifestation through delusional methods. Because it was already a thing coming into the year, if I'm not mistaken, but it definitely got so much bigger over the year. Now, this is a part that I kind of want you to consider on your own. I think the next couple of topics that I will be going over will be more personal related, even though these are universal themes. I think that some of these conversations aren't always going to be so socially discussed. I feel like because they're so sensitive, that not every space will actually speak on these things. And also they're more on a little bit more of a side that people don't really always like to have out in the open. It's crept its way into media, but there's not as much open discourse about it. So I want to know, basically, what was your experience with addiction this year? Like, and I don't necessarily mean it has to necessarily be to any substance or any drug of any sort, but addiction to like social media, shopping, working. Just like, what were your addictions this year? I feel like that's a very big one of this year, because again, 7 and Neptune connects to those themes. And I think that is a really interesting conversation to have, of how did addiction show up in your life this year? And I know for me, working was definitely one of them. And also still being so attached to like social media and scrolling, even if it's something that I don't even actively want to do in that moment, I still can't find myself scrolling. And I'm like, why am I scrolling right now? And I kind of am intrigued to see how that played out for you, of if that's something that you also resonate with, that it was sort of kind of just like one of those years where you just didn't feel like you had so much hands-on control in regards to the things that you were trying to do. If you didn't feel like you could always step away, you felt like you were sucked in more than usual. And that feels very much 7 themes and 7 energy because when we bring in, not only, again, I've been saying a lot of Neptune, but considering also Mercury in there, Mercury being connected to the mind and this mental stimulation, I feel like there was a craving for getting the mind more stimulation this year, and that really can come up through addiction, of a dopamine addiction. I don't know how true to fact that is, but stuff like that, of really being a fiend for some stuff type beat. But another thing under those addictions, something can be stalkers, obsessive people, and also just like higher drug and alcohol use and even abuse of those things. So these are things that are sort of kind of more personal to you, for you to consider your experience with those things. Because in regards to obsessive people, I had started this and talked about how the beginning of this year, the first day of this year, very much heavy on power dynamics and a crave for control. And it's in a space of there's not really a lot of control. You can't really sit down and be like, oh, yep, nope, this is how things are going to go. It's a universal 7 year. It's really not in your hands. I'm not even going to lie. And with obsessive people, they're craving this control. And I feel like that was, in regards to obsessive people, I feel like there was more conversations around toxic and abusive relationships to an extent. I feel like there's always space for more because there's just things that need to be fixed. But I think that there was a lot more open discourse, at least in my end of the world, around the harm that is caused from a lack of boundaries, which is something that Seven also definitely encapsulates of in staying in this comfort zone. That comfort zone might not always be a safe zone. Sometimes you have to leave that space to get something better. And that also tied in Seven is staying in that comfort zone, but also being able to recognize and process when the time is to step out of that comfort zone and go into this unknown and go into this mystery and step into this place where you're not completely certain and you're not completely sure, but you know at the same time that's the space that you need to be in and not so much where you were. And I feel like that was definitely something that was coming up. And I also feel like in regards to drug and alcohol use and abuse, there was more studies around and more studies around the long-term effects of drug and alcohol use, but also the open conversations around sobriety and addiction. I feel like that's the beautiful thing about one of the beautiful things about this year, of just people being able to also bring more community, especially emphasized by the fact that this year was 2023. There's two twos, and two is connected to community and connection and support and care and nurturance. And I feel like when you're able to really indulge in that, especially when it comes to something as difficult as sobriety, you're able to really see people come together to be like, yo, I got you. I see you where you're at. I understand your story, your struggle. I know that I'm rooting for you type beat. And I really love that. That was really beautiful. Something else that I feel like is not a shocker is spiritual impacts for this year. There was a huge likelihood of spiritualists going viral or gaining clientele, spiritual warfare, heightened intuition, things around sound waves and meditation techniques, conversations around dream work and higher powers, spiritual awakenings and debunking, like fact and fiction. And there has been a lot of that stuff. I've seen a lot more open conversation and open discourse around the spiritual space and the things that are going viral. It's like I felt like for example, portals in regards to it's 11:11, it's 10:10, what do you do? I felt like those were such a big thing this year specifically. And even for me in my own work, I've definitely talked about these portals and brought numerology more dominantly into those spaces. And I'm excited to continue to do that because I don't think that the conversation around portals, for continuing this example, is going anywhere. But that was definitely something that I just saw so much more of. Every single opportunity somebody had of, oh, today's January 23rd and da-da-da. It's like, oh, today's 123. And then like people really hunkering down and stuff like that. And I've seen a lot more spiritualists being interviewed and invited on shows and broadcasting things and on radios and just stuff like that. I've seen a lot more of that content. And I've also seen and heard a lot more around spiritual stuff in regards to witchcraft. That might be just something personal to me in regards to my timeline and to the people I hang around, but I've heard a lot more conversation around witchcraft, what it is, how to do it, how to indulge in it, what is it, everything around it. And I think that's been really cool in regards to witchcraft and spell work and stuff like that. But also being spiritual warfare, I feel like that's been a very big thing. I feel like people have gotten more into really understanding protecting your peace on an energetic side and a spiritual side and not always just the physical. Because even if you're saying, okay, yep, I'm blocking this person's number, that energy does still speak volumes. So I feel like that I've seen a lot more like cord cutting type things going around. So that was like something that I feel like, yeah, definitely went down. Now, another thing was major health impacts and crises possibly in healthcare. And I know that in an area that I'm in, there's a shortage of nurses and doctors and just healthcare professionals. And I don't know how worldwide that is, but that's definitely something that was a likely thing this year. And also there's a lot of triggers to mental health. And I've seen a lot more studies around mental health and also specifically the impacts of PTSD. Now, why that is very interesting is because that PTSD is connected to something that happened in the past, and 7 is also connected to the past. So I'm not surprised that there were so many things around specifically PTSD, but also trauma work and trauma that has happened typically a bit of time ago. So I'm not surprised by any of that at all. And I'm also really excited that there's more information around those things. Now, I'll also say that illnesses was another thing for this, and this can be from the past of any length. And I want to say, I think it's called ice caps, ? Not completely sure if that's what they're called. Melting. Something melting, and the diseases from way back when coming. Like, though they're in the air. They can pull up on us, type beat. And that's definitely been a thing. That's definitely been a thing. So the ice caps are melting, and the diseases from hundreds of years ago are pulling up on us to try and do something, I guess. But yeah, this is another thing I'm not really shocked by for real, to see so much of that. But something else that comes up is botched surgeries, or just surgeries not going that well. And I've seen so many more headlines about public figures either passing away or having botched surgeries, or just things not go well in surgeries, or having just health issues, either that require surgery or after a surgery, just surgeries, needless to say. And that's just, again, numbers be numbering. And I think that this is one of those points where I get to where I'm just like, I need y'all to know that when you know what you're looking for on a numerological side, you can really be in there. Because I know when I filmed this video, I wasn't completely certain in how much I would be able to, be right about per se. But to see so many of these things be what happened this year is honestly kind of impressive, because you can really see how much numbers be numbering. Now, another thing that came up was people looking into more pressure point therapy and like acupressure. And there's been a popularization around gua sha and face massaging this year. And I think that sort of kind of might have started a little bit of last year, but I've seen a lot more people put a lot of emphasis on skincare, and also specifically massaging not only the face, but also the legs and the feet, and just circulation things, which is a very big 7 theme, because I want to say 7 is connected to the nervous system in some way. And that's been a very, 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 very big thing. So I'm really just like, 7 kind of went hard a little bit, not gonna lie, but it also was a little scary, sometimes. Something else that happened this year is very likely to was spikes in anxiety and depression. Definitely can see that, but also health impacts that involve the blood, especially circulation, like I said earlier, stomach issues, infections, diseases, health impacts involving the genitals. Now, that's something, again, these are certain things that I don't see so much public discourse and very loud discourse about. Some of these topics, I feel like these are things that you can see for yourself, of how it showed up in your personal life, of did you just hear this in passing, did you see a headline, was it on Twitter, was it on TikTok, just like sort of kind of just take note for yourself. Now, something else that comes up is things within the arts. Now, this makes complete sense considering how artistic 7 is and can be. So it puts an emphasis on groundbreaking art pieces and uncovering history around past artists or past art pieces. And I've definitely seen a lot of that this year, but also things around the fashion industry. I did see a lot was something in regards to arts of like people. I want to say Pharrell Williams got hired to Louis Vuitton, I want to say this year, as a creative director. But also in regards to uncovering more history about past artists, things around Tupac happened this year, but also things around Diddy happened this year. So it's been very interesting, I will say. It's definitely been something that nobody was really, I don't think anybody could have spotted it. And also I think that it's so funny that so many people were like, this was not on my bingo card for this year. So hey, listen, you might want to tap into my Universal 8 episodes so you can get your bingo cards ready. But continuing, anything past, literally anything and everything was another big theme for this. So this puts an emphasis on an interest on things as a child, things that you had an interest in as a child, past lives, old habits, past people, old beliefs. And I've seen a lot of conversation and a lot more open conversation around parenting, around religion, around doing things for your inner child. And that's been beautiful. And I've really loved to see so many conversations that are also very healing, because I don't think I mentioned it in that video, but I might have, of how much healing was going to be a very big theme for this year. And I think that comes from that introspection and also that shadow work that was a very likely theme for this year. So it just is so beautiful to see people having these conversations around how to do better. I've seen a more of a popularization around gentle parenting, which is a very hard thing to do. It's so much easier to just yell when you're frustrated. It takes a lot of emotional regulation and self-awareness and self-control to be able to really calmly speak sometimes. So to really see a lot more people actively and consistently do their best to simply just be kind and also be gentle when speaking to a new human being who doesn't know any better, in regards to their parenting, and then also doing the same for their inner child. So I think that's very beautiful. So there's also that in regards to past anything and everything, there's also that emphasis around nostalgia and fantasy. And I've seen a lot of people and a lot of just media chasing familiarity. And I want to say the Barbie movie came out this year, and that was a very big deal. And a lot of people grew up with Barbie, and a lot of people were really excited to see that movie. And there's been a bunch of other movies that have come out this year that really chase that familiarity of childhood, of the things that you grew up with, of the things that you have seen before. But I'm really excited and really hopeful towards people coming up with new ideas, especially in the next like 3-ish years, because next year is going to be Universal 8 year. The year after that is going to be Universal 9 year. So there's a level of emphasis around closing cycles. But then the year after that, which would be, I want to say 2026, will be a Universal 1 year. And with that 2 and that 6 in there, that puts an emphasis on the arts and creativity. So I'm excited to really see what new creativity we indulge into over the next few years, basically. But there's also going to be, or there also has been, more Black and POC fantasy focused work in the media. I've seen so many more authors who are Black or a POC who are writing fantasy work. And I think that's been beautiful to see, because inclusion and representation is such a very big, beautiful thing. And when you see that as a child, that somebody who looks like you, or even read that as a child, that somebody who looks like you or sounds like you or does the things that you and your family do, there's nothing that can really replace that feeling. And I'm so excited that so many of the younger people are able to, younger and even people who are older, are able to see and experience the joy of being seen in a body of work, in a movie, in a show, of just like, this is something I've always been drawn to, but never had the opportunity to indulge in. I just think that's been so beautiful. Now, something else was like feeling old yet, was it might have been a theme this year of like that type of content, and also of remember this, of reminding you of songs that you haven't heard in a while. That's also been a content thing for this year. But moving into our last and final topic, around the unconscious. So more themes around the dreams and psychedelics, lucid dreaming and predictive dreams, and dreams that are more connected to reality. And in regards to the dreams being more connected to reality, when I was back on Twitter, I made a tweet about how on January 11th, 2025, the tropical and draconic transits will be at the exact same spot, down to the degree. Now, if you're not familiar with draconic astrology highlights the unconscious, whereas tropical astrology is more emphasis on the conscious. So with draconic being connected to that unconscious, is things that you're not really seeing. Now, I used to be a draconic astrologer as well as a tropical astrologer, so I've studied this actually, this particular time period, very, very much. I dove deep, because the nodes in draconic sit at 0 degrees Aries. So it's very much going to be things sort of kind of clashing together, is where very much what I see it as. especially with Aries and Libra being involved. So I'm excited to see what happens January 11th, 2025, and how dreams and even numerology will play into that and stuff like that, because I actually didn't even pull the numbers for that, because when I tweeted that, I wasn't a numerologist yet, at least not fully. So it's really interesting to see how that's going to play out. But in regards to lucid dreaming and predictive dreaming, I've seen a lot more content around that stuff. So I think that this year has been interesting, most definitely. And I'm excited to see how next year will play out. Considering that the way that universal years work, you will always get a taste of the next year, or a hint per se of what is to come in the year prior, just because it would be really weird to go from, oh, we're going to be talking about art and media and glamour and beauty and entertainment this year because it's the Universal 7 year, and then next year we're only talking about everything that's not the things that we talked about yesterday, or not yesterday, but last year. It wouldn't make any sense. So you're always going to see a very natural transition, and you already have gotten a taste in, I want to say, October of this year, January and October of hypothetically what can happen next year. And I feel like a really big emphasis around what next year holds is more structured around October to December, especially because that would be the last month that would line up with next year's energy. So I'm excited because we're ending off this year in that 157 energy, which is today. So I hope today has treated you well, and I hope you spent some good intentional time with yourself. Some time maybe reading is a really good thing to do today if you're interested, as well as meditation, journaling, really getting things up and out of your system. And also nervous system regulation is a very good thing to do today. Spending some time with yourself is a very good thing to do today, but also expressing yourself, of stepping into that authenticity and intentionality, all very good things to do today. But overall, I hope you love this. I know this was a little bit of a long one, but hey, as we know, I can talk for hours. But this was cool. This was fire. I honestly enjoyed this so much. And I'm very glad that you listened. So make sure you share this with somebody who wants to even know about what happened this year in a nice little synopsis and on numerological side. But also, if they're interested in learning about numbers or just how numbers work. But make sure you're following me on Instagram and TikTok at Numbers with H. Shakari. And also, you might want to go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because there might be something coming there in the near future. We'll see what happens with that. But thank you for chopping it up with me. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.